empty. A beat like this might tempt me to pull, show my rings and my fat gold chain. Grab the mic like I'm on so trained, but I'll wait, cause I'll master this. Let the others go first so the brothers don't miss. Eric, we break the sticks. You got it! Rock here will begin when you make the mix. I'll experiment like a scientist. You wanna rhyme? You gotta sign my list. Cause I'm a manifest and bless the mic I'll hold. You want an X? Then you gotta have soul. Cause if you ain't got it, I'ma make an encore. Take the mic, make the people respond for the all. Cause that's the way it'll have to be. If you wanna get on after me, think about it. Wait, erase your rhyme. Forget it. And don't waste your time. Cause I'll be in the crowd if you ain't controlling it. Drop the mic, you shouldn't be holding it. This is how it should be done. This style is identical to none. Some try to make it sound like this, but you'll get me. So upset that I'm wet cause you're sweating me. I drip steam.
The majority of people have a problem of selling themselves because usually IT people may be shy, they're not used car salesmen. They're not the one that's boisterous. They're not arrogant. Most people in the IT kind of humble, stick to themselves or whatnot. So we have a hard time selling ourselves, and we have to learn how to sell ourselves. And most of us have this imposter syndrome where we think, well, if I put this on my resume and I don't really know it, well, they're going to call me out on my job, doing an interview. Maybe so, but we talk about only put stuff on your resume that you can talk through, right? Or you have working knowledge of. Don't put stuff like, oh yeah, I'm a CISSP, and you're not. That's not what we're talking about dealing with. So what I'm going to do, we're going to walk through a resume and how I look and find stuff. Right now, I drink my own Kool-Aid. So here's an example of my resume. All right. I think this is an older one, 2019 or 2020, something like that. And normally, every time I learn something, every couple of months or 3 months, I put it on there. Right. So I drink my own Kool-Aid, eat my own dog food, however you call it. But this is my resume. Right. And I have it divided in 3 sections. My knowledge base, dealing with my software programming languages, operating systems, networking background. And this is older because I think I have something dealing with security as well, security background. But this gives you an idea of my knowledge base, right? Now, when you look at this is pretty much anything I touch and play with, I put it on the resume. I don't care if I haven't touched it in 10 years because some of this stuff is not even, around, right? Nobody's using Windows XP. And I don't expect anybody to ask me a question on Windows XP. But I put it on there because I've been in the industry a little bit longer just to show my longevity. Okay? HTML, C++. If you start asking me questions about C++ and Java, I've taken a Java class and C++ class, you're barking up the wrong tree. And I'm not applying for jobs that are asking for that. I may apply for a job that's asking for Python, and Python's not even on there, right? So it just kind of shows you that, look, if they ask me a question about that in the interview, I steer it completely different. I haven't used that in years. And if you want me to do that, you get the wrong person, right? So that kind of leaves it up to their imagination, and it makes them, I say jokingly to get a laugh out of them or a smile, right? But pretty much any operating systems I dealt with, is on this thing. From
I have a
Cisco.
question, if that's okay. Sorry to interrupt. I
Sure,
just
go
want to
ahead.
ask the question before I forget.
Okay.
So, I guess you're kind of going against the norm. I guess I suppose, because majority of the time, what I hear about resume is if it's not relevant to the job, don't put it on there. If it's not something that you know that you are good with currently, don't put it on there, because it don't have nothing to do with the job. One, it doesn't have anything to do with the job. So my question is, I guess you have a method to your madness. as to why you put stuff that is no longer there. Like I see you got Windows XP, Vista, 95, 98, which we
Right.
all know no longer, Windows 7, which we all know it's no longer good. I mean, it's no longer in existence, Windows 2000. So I'm just wondering what your logic is in having stuff that are no longer being used on your resume. Just
Yeah. Good
curious.
question. And for two things. One, I had mentioned that it shows my longevity, right? So think of this: everybody has a digital profile or persona of what they want to convey, right? So this resume is like 5 pages. I have one 6 pages. So depending upon what job I'm applying for, I have multiple resumes, right? So when I applied for Cisco, the guy was like, "Oh, you need to cut your page down to 3. Your resume." Okay, no problem. I got it down to like 4 or something like that. But in that case, I would take out the Java, the C++, all this other stuff, right? To cut it down. Now, backtrack is no longer around. I'll cut that out. But the thing about it is, I won't. When you look at my resume, I want it to look like a book, like it's a pamphlet, right? And before I send them my resume, I'm automatically asking what's the salary, which is against the norm. Because usually you don't want to talk about salary. I'm like, hell, I do want to talk about salary. And I tell people this all the time, everybody should be making 150. If you've been in the IT field for 3 years, you should be making 150 or close to it, 149, 148, right? You're 3 jobs away from making 150. So when people contact me, when I send them my resume, I don't want to send them a resume of somebody that looks like they only worth 80 or $90,000. So we have to think about, what does a resume look like for a person who's making high 6 figures, right? So if you want to know what a resume for a person that looks in high 6 figures, guess what? You're looking at one now. Because I want to convey a certain mentality when they look at my resume, to be like, well, damn, the common resume is supposed to be 1 page or 2 page. This thing is 5 or 6 pages, right? And so it conveys something a little bit different. And as we scroll down, right, I got my work experience and everything, but one of the reasons why is the formatting of it. So I got my education and stuff on the side, right? I used to be a class instructor. I got certification that have expired on the side. That kind of goes against the norm as well, right? But as you continue to go down the resume, it gets to a point where it has my job history, and then a lot of the stuff is vendor training, right? I don't necessarily have to put it on there, but it shows to an average person that, look, this guy is serious about his training. So I have my own training budget. So when they're looking at my training and they see stuff, I had a job offer for an interview just because I took this class, because this is a very well-known class for people who do export development, right? So part of that keyword search. And then I have publications and presentations that I've done, right? Because I'm not the average guy. Now I can cut all this stuff out, you know, but that does not go with my digital persona or mystique that I'm trying to establish. I'm trying to show, look, you got a guy that is international speaker, right? National speaker. And then I have my, volunteer activities as well. So it's a base, these are just suggestions. You have to kind of take it and put it in what you're trying to convey. If you want to, I've taken classes where I don't put it on there, but sometimes when you have a person that has multiple programming languages on it, they're like, okay, some people think that if you get one programming language, you can pick up another one and another one, right? So this conveys that. But when I'm in an interview, they're not going to ask me about stuff in C++ or Java, because it doesn't make sense. right? Now, if they do, I'll just say, look, I haven't used it in a while. And if they want to go down that rabbit hole, we can. You know, I've been in interviews where I told people, look, let me just tell you what I know. And I did that, and it worked well for the interview. And I don't do it arrogantly, but I do it in a salesman type way to say, look, let me just tell you what I know. And then based upon that, you can ask me questions on that. And they're like, okay, sure. Because they're getting ready to go to lunch anyway, because usually most interviews are either before people go to lunch so they can talk about it during lunch or after lunch. And if they're doing it after lunch, you know, if they ate too much food, they're ready to go to sleep anyway. So it just kind of depends. And usually I like to schedule my interviews during that particular time because I know it's going to be real short. I can get in and I can get out. Right? Any more questions?
After lunch or before?
Either one. Because if I go after lunch, they're going to be all full. Their brain is kind of foggy because the blood is trying to digest the food. If I go before lunch, they're going to be rushing through because 11 o'clock, some people start getting a little bit hungry because at 12 o'clock they want to go and, do whatever. A little bit different now with the pandemic, you know, because now you're doing video, but still the same premise. Okay. Any more questions? So does that make sense? If you have to go with what you feel comfortable with. You know, I feel comfortable with talking about stuff or having a response for that. Tickle. I don't think anybody ever uses that. But when I was going for my CCIE, that was the language on Cisco switches. That's the native scripting language that we use to test basic connectivity. Nobody's going to ask me a question on that. But if you were studying for your CCIE and have taken an exam, then you may say, "Oh, this guy knows Tickle. He's been exposed to it." And then you look for my certifications. I don't even have it on it, but I have the reading and multiple lab attempts. Right? So now the person can be like, okay, he's tried to get a CCA and he failed. And if the person in the room who was studying probably failed as well, then we're going to gel on that. Or if he has gotten it, he's sympathetic to people that have failed. So now I just established a relationship. And usually when you're in that interview, depending upon the type of job that you're interviewing for, they're going to ask you questions relevant to the job that you're going for. They don't really care about your resume because they figure that most people lie on their resumes and exaggerate and stretch the truth. So they're ask you stuff that's relevant to your job. And if you're in an interview and they kind of humming and hawing and don't know what to ask you and they start looking at your resume, they're not prepared for the interview. And those are the type of interviews I like because I can take it and go at it and make it go towards my direction that I want to lead them. Because a lot of people they keeping the lights on, so they're not going to sit in the room and look at your resume, in detail. Make sense? Okay. So just wanted to show you that when I present to you guys the security template, that I'm really using it. So this is one that I've used in the past. And like I say, it's just a suggestion, but I used to be an instructor at ITT Tech. And we had career services, and they would have their resume traditional template. You keep it one page, blah, blah, blah. But I would give my students this template. It looked a little different because it always evolves. And they will always tell me when we can go. I had one student apply for the same job, two different resumes. They thought it was two different people because the resume was different because they used my template versus the career services resume. Okay. So take what is worth. Like I say, it's just suggestions to actually use, but I've had and other people have pretty good success. All right. So this is the template. And basically, just having a skills section. You can call it what you want. I break it down to software and programming languages, operating systems background, and this one you see it says security and networking, right? And the main thing about this is to trigger those keywords. Okay, and then you have your work. So We're talking, I'm a big advocate of threat intelligence or threat research. So this is just some wording that I use. And then here's an example of a job description for someone that was an assembly person. And let me make this bigger. And then here's one for somebody that did work study. Now, I want you to notice the language. Duties included installing Ford motor axles while performing environmental controls. You know what that means? I didn't cut off my own finger or my foot on a job. I knew what I was doing. So you want to be able to use language that sells yourself, right? I didn't cut off my finger. I didn't cut off anybody else's finger working. I didn't lose an arm. Hey, guess what? You can do your job. Quality controls, right? This person was team lead for 16 members. He provided training for new employees to adapt to a fast-paced environment. Just fancy words. Say when a new person came, you helped them out, you trained them, right? Accomplish and maintain monthly production quotas. Sounds pretty fancy. This means you came to work every day, but you don't want to put that on your. I came to work every day. You're supposed to, right? But this shows that you understand the business side of it by, okay, me coming to work every day is going to make production quotas. All right. Also responsible for being customer conflict resolution liaison and handling customer complaints. All right. That means if somebody complained, they didn't go off the handle, go off the handle. Customer's always right. Provided performance evaluations on line assembly designed by operational engineers for quality assurance to reduce human performance errors. That's basically the same thing I said in the first sentence. I just had more words to do it. Accountability for maintaining records of goods shipped and received for inventory, responsible for resolution of production issues and peer review. So this is just sentences added to beef up that particular section. Now, some people, when they do their resumes, they do it by paragraphs or statements, and some people use bullet points, right? And a lot of people use the bullet points because it takes up space. So it makes the resume look longer. Okay. And other people just use the bullet points because that's what they're accustomed to. But usually I find out that people do the bullet points because it's just taking up, they want to make it look longer. Right. And having each one of these sentences spaced out makes it longer, particularly if you don't have enough stuff on your resume. Make sense? So you want to look at kind of those keywords that shows leadership. Okay. And like I said, a lot of times we don't understand what we're doing or how to put our day-to-day activities on a resume. So that's why I keep mine always up to date. All right. So even as a network administrator, duties include auditing and documenting network infrastructure, and it has the routing protocols. Lead engineer for deploying iOS images. So that means they just did updates. Provided level 1 to technical support for LAN and connectivity issues. Right. So you want to make sure that I'm the lead engineer, or I did something lead. I'm responsible for maintaining, right? I provided level 1 and level 2. And then the open source intelligence threat researcher, lead researcher, right? Extracted, analyzing, and disseminating open source intelligence on threat actors targeting, multiple industries. Okay. So this is the resume template. Any questions so far?
Can I make a couple of comments?
Yes, comments, questions are welcome.
I got you on 2 machines at the mute. Okay, sorry.
That's all right.
So this is Coach Roger. I do some work with resume writing, and one of the things that we look at, maybe that you didn't cover in the beginning, but I think it's important for people to know that one of the most used purposes for a resume is to disqualify you. I got 1,000 people. I'm only going to talk to 100. So the most used purpose of a resume is to tell people who they don't want to talk to. And I think it's important to keep that in mind as we're developing our resumes. Another answer to the question about adding more terms, another reason to do that would be that resumes go into a resume database, and maybe you didn't get selected for this particular thing, but coming up, they may need something else. And that something else shows up on your resume. Then when a hiring person goes looking, you show up in a different search. And then the last comment I have is there's a STAR interviewing system, STAR. You can Google it. But I think it's good to, as you develop your resume, look at the STAR interviewing system, because a resume is about telling your story. An interview is about telling your story, and they should line up. So if you think about an effective way of telling your story, which is what STAR talks about, as you develop your resume, I think you come up with a product that works well when you interview. Thanks, Otis.
No problem. And coach, you make a good point that it's going to disqualify certain people. So when you're doing your resume, you have to think about, okay, what's the next person's going to have? And then what will you have? Right? So it's all, all that stuff kind of goes into that mix of, okay, I need to show that I'm the qualified candidate. Right? And the reason why is better to give a little bit more information to get the interview. And then once you get in that interview, you can level set. And we've had, Al, if you check the YouTube channel, did something about how to win in the interview, right? So once you get in there and you starstruck them, you're golden. It's like 150, you know. And I've been in interviews where like we're not offering 150. That's too high. I'm like, all right, appreciate the offer. I know somebody else that works for less than 150, but I gotta go, and you know what they're gonna do? Well, we'll see what we can do. So those are the things you have to think about, is you have to establish a persona to say, okay, this is me, right? I'm above everybody else that you ever dealt with. What's it, when recruiters hit me up, okay, what's the opportunity? How much does it make? Yeah, I don't work for that, but I know somebody else who does. Let me know when you get an offer, that's in my range. And that completely blows their mind. And that's how you have to be. So this is the resume template, right? So when someone sends me a resume, what I do, I just make it look like mine, right? Now, I've done this for people and they switch it up and they change it around. I don't get offended as long as you get the job. I get offended when you don't get the job, right? So you can take it, do whatever you want with it. I just want to make sure that you sell yourself the way you should. Okay. And typically, when you look at this resume, these are the things that we've covered in the past, right? So those individuals that are new, some of this stuff is we haven't talked about, or you haven't been exposed to, or maybe you have, but I'm sorry, under here. These are the things that we've talked about in the past, right? So when you have a resume, you automatically have at least certain skills that you can put on. All right. And now when you start attending Rasul, you start attending Al stuff, this thing should be getting bigger and bigger. Right. So that's the cool part of having that exposure. Now you just gotta go home and lab it out and practice it. But this stuff should be getting bigger for you. So this is the resume that I was given. Like I said, nothing wrong with it, but just to kind of spice it up, to make it look, or to let it get hits, because it's already getting some hits, right? But we want to not be 80, 90, we want it to be in that resume pile to look at. When they look at it, be like, okay, this guy's gonna want some money, because hell, I can just tell by his resume. you know it has the keywords, it has everything. And they call him, he gets in, he's gonna be dynamite, he's gonna blow him away. So, but he has the degrees, right? When I first looked at it, I'm like, okay, I've had conversations with him, and he knows more than this stuff, right? His background is a blaster, then he, chief blaster, then floor manager. Okay, customer service, certifications in process, and then he has his skills at the bottom, right? I know he knows more than this stuff, right? Now, we're just gonna kind of walk through, and we're gonna try to get it all done. And yeah, well, this is what we do. Now, it doesn't matter about what your job should be, right? I don't have an experience. I was a blaster. Hell, how many people ever dealt with dynamite before? You know, so that in itself shows that this guy has to be on point, right? Because this is not a job just anybody's gonna deal with, right? So you can use that in your favor. Some of you guys may know this guy. He used to be a forklift operator. His resume reads forklift operator, and then he's a junior network engineer and a network engineer. Right now, he's at West Monroe Partners, right? Shark guy. He's in that six-figure category. So it doesn't matter what that stepping stone is. I was in law school, and then I started doing IT stuff. So it doesn't matter about your background. It matters how well you know your stuff. But you see, he has the bullet points, right? Nothing wrong with that. But I was thinking about, well, I have this stuff. You're looking at a resume, and then what they're going to do is say, with this particular resume, if I was looking at it, I'm going to see Blaster, and I'm like, you know what? That gets my attention right there. Hell, I'll interview him just to talk to him to see what the hell that does, because that's very interesting. I remember Al and Rasul told me the story that at one of their jobs, their top guy before they got there was a grave digger. So it doesn't matter what you do, it's about taking that next step. And as Coach was talking about telling a story, if you move from blaster to IT, that's a story in itself that's going to pique their interest, right? Or it may turn them away. But for me, it'll pique my interest. So now I need to figure out, I'm looking through all this stuff. I'm like, he got certifications in progress. That's me. So if somebody's looking for somebody that's a CCNA, it's in progress. This is going to get flagged. If they're looking for someone else that has a Security Plus certification, guess what? This is going to get flagged and put in that database. Network Plus, A Plus, right? So you see the pattern. It doesn't matter if you have it or not. It shows that, look, this person is working towards that, but it's going to be flagged in the database in the CCNA pile. If I don't have my CCNA, although I'm working for it, if I don't put it on the resume, it's not even getting in the database. Because in honesty, if I had a choice to choose between a Network Plus guy and the CCNA guy, 99.9% of the networking equipment is Cisco. I'm going to go with the CCNA. I probably won't even look at the Network Plus guy. But he has his base covered because whatever's going to be flagged in that database, it's covered. Right? So I'm like, okay, certification is good. The skill section, we gotta beef that up. Right? Looking at this stuff here, I can add to it to try to make it more dynamic. Floor manager, the same thing. The blasters, definitely. I think that is a selling point to highlight for that story, but then also we got to beef this up as well. So the first thing I do, I'm going to go to Indeed, and let's just say we're going to start with the floor manager, right? I want to beef up this a little bit, but I don't know what a floor manager does. I've never been a floor manager. So this is what I do. I'm going to go to, copy that. I'm going to go to Indeed.com. I'm going to put in floor manager. Find jobs. And I do a national search. And somebody just put in the chat room. I will put the YouTube channel in the chat room. Give me a moment. So now, do this. I'm going to look at floor manager here. Here. So why am I doing this? Because I don't know what a floor manager does. I already have a good idea of what they're doing, schedule, maintaining, bill payment. But I want them to show that, look, he's just not a floor manager. He's like the Michael Jordan of floor managers. So this is the reason why I want to beef this up. Because I want them to see a pattern of every job on there to say, okay, this guy knows his stuff. So I'm going to go back to floor manager. And then what I'm going to do is look at job descriptions and see something that I can add to it. So this is right here. I was a team lead with integrity. I wanted to create an environment where your team members feel included, valued, and supported. All right. He probably did that because he's not an asshole. Right. So he probably was a good team member. Hell, he's the floor manager. Communicate with management the needs of the store, customers, and confidence. Right. So what I started doing is I get Notepad out and I'll just say, okay, I want to use this wording here. I like this one here. You know, mentoring, training, coaching, motivating. That's a good manager. He's a floor manager, right? And words like this are key words that when people look at, they're like, okay, this person is mentoring, training. He's been in management. So if I'm a hiring manager, he knows my pains. He knows my woes. And if he's a good hiring manager, he's trying to be concerned about mentoring, training, coaching, motivating, providing feedback, right? So I want to put that on there. So I'm not looking, help process inventory, that was already on there. Attend weekly meetings. Maybe I can put that on there. I'm just going down. All right, let's go to the next one.
Yeah, I just want to
Yes.
share a link for a job. It's in the Chicago area for those who are just getting into the field, and it kind of goes along with what you're showing is an entry level, and really just trying to do what you're doing is emphasizing the skills that you've shown in your previous jobs, even if they're not related to cybersecurity. And I would say somebody on this call really should go for this position. I mean, if you've gone and listened to, been on OTA's meetups, if you've been on Al's meetup, if you've been on Rasul's meetup, you should be all those things that you've learned on there should be just exactly what they're looking for. And if you look at the posting, it really says no formal experience required. But they talk about
Those,
just
and those are the things that people should jump on. I know that imposter syndrome always creeps up, that I don't think I'm qualified. But when someone is telling you it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it is a duck, no experience qualified, that's perfect. Because they're saying that, look, they will work with you to get you to the point, right? And they're trying to establish some loyalty with you, right? So jump on that. Did you put it in the chat room? And we'll look at it in a second at the
Yeah, I put it in the
at the
chat.
end of the call. Okay. So this one didn't find anything I really liked. I'm gonna go to the next one. Must be working the shift, feedback, this and that. So we're going back here. All right. So I found some stuff. And then more importantly, I'm going to show you guys what I did. I went through and I'm going to enlarge it. This is what I found. This is how my wording was. All right. Led floor operational tasks and ensure employee performance satisfaction. Maintain duties performed in accordance with departmental and property policies, practices, and procedures. Accomplish and maintain monthly production quotas. Also responsible for being a customer conflict. So this is the same wording from the other one, right? Engage for interviews, new hire selection, train and supervise employees for operation efficiency through effective communication, recognition, coaching, and development. Directly supervise and coordinate activities of production workers. Organize daily workload on a weekly basis, blah, blah, blah. You guys can read, right? Now, this is my suggestion. I don't know if he feels comfortable with doing all this stuff and he's on the call and we'll start doing some interactive stuff. And then he can add all the stuff in as well, right? But I just want to have things like led flow operational, accomplish, maintain, those kind of keywords, right? Directly supervise and say, this guy is a leader, right? And I just went through and found stuff for a floor manager. Then I did the exact same thing for customer service rep. This is what I found. Team lead would follow for customer requests and escalations, and identify customer needs, clarify information. So all this goes in, and then he can just add it to it, or he can take away from it and feels like, you know what? I've never engaged in interviews or new hire selection. Okay, just take it off. Never trained, so it depends upon what he actually felt on the job. But usually when you're doing a resume, you got a job coming up, you're like, I got to think back what I did. And so when I'm thinking back of what I did, years ago, in 2015 and 2014, I can come up with this because I remember those things, right? So sometimes we forget stuff. So when you look at the job responsibilities and descriptions, then it jars your memory. Say, oh yeah, I did that as well. And it's just, filling this stuff up, right? So same thing for underground mining chief blaster, right? Okay. So for the inventory, so sorry about that. My son wanted to ask me something. So here is maintain inventory of explosive, non-explosive. He just had inventory, so I put maintain just because those power words that sometimes they used to call them. Then I said perform technical research on blasting operations at surface mine sites for establishing standards for blaster training and procedures by the division. He may not have done blaster training. It could have just been blasting procedures used by whatever division or team or department, right? Knowledge transfer of explosive products, blasting, because I'm pretty sure during this course of a job, somebody asked him about something and he was able to share with them what he knew so they won't blow everybody up, right? So, okay, knowledge transfer, develop blast plans and designs. You know, I thought of that part of the safety precautions, policies, and procedures, right? Maintain blast vibration control. I don't know what the hell that is, but I saw it on another one. So I thought, okay, let me put it on this one. Add to it, give it to the person. They'll say, okay, that's way off base, or yeah, that's something that I did, or let me tweak it, right? So these are just suggestions for him to tweak it for his own personality. And then I went to Blaster, same thing, conduct a field test. So I just go into websites, looking at other job descriptions, and now I'm thinking, okay, he had to do this, or maybe he didn't do it. Maybe I'm off base, right? So when I do this on a resume, I schedule a meeting with the person, and then I say, well, this is what I found. Is it off track, on track? What do you want to delete? You know, and they have it and they take it and they run with it. But at least give them the rationale of why I put this on there. And then I got to the technical stuff. So I was like, okay, it's help desk. But then I started writing stuff, which is you saw on the template. And this is the part where I'm like, okay, when I schedule a call with them, I need to flush out what he actually does on his job, because I know, this is what he has on there. I know he's missing something because on the job description, this is his skill set. He has ServiceNow. And I know on the other jobs, he probably didn't use ServiceNow, because usually ServiceNow is a ticketing system used by, IT professionals. So I know it's missing something. All right. Um, and then what I'll do, as a template, I'll delete this stuff off. I just use it on there so I can get some of the wording in my mind, and I'll leave it for them to do it as well. Here's a misspelling. And then I'll leave this on here as well. Now, if they feel comfortable using OSINT, then they'll use it. If not, then they'll take it off. But if the person is really a sharp and he's a go-getter, and he attended Nick's, hell, I think we did 3 months of OSINT training. And now Al is doing threat research and threat, intelligence. So he may want to keep this on there, because he's going down that path and beefing that section out, right? Um, so I just kind of leave that on there. I put objective for the job. Nobody really reads that. They know you want to get a job. So a lot of people have a whole paragraph. They're doing a dissertation or something. Just keep it short and simple, because nobody really reads that. Education, certifications he's working on. So this is my template for soft skills, right? And for the soft skills, I usually put, type in 30 words per minute. They're not going to give you a typing test to figure that out, right? And most people in the IT field, they're not peckers, so they at least can do 10 words a minute, you know. So if you want to put 10 words, that's fine. But everything else, able to navigate within fast, all this stuff is just those soft skills. Okay. And then I have something else that I just thought of. Okay, maybe your soft skill, if you don't feel comfortable with that, you can say, you know what, my soft skill is the ability to establish credibility and rapport with thought leaders. Exercise sound judgment, superior problem solving and decision making skills, and effective listening abilities, right? Or maybe combine these together. But it's up to the person. But I thought that was pretty effective, because basically you think everybody has common sense, but they don't. And I remember a guy telling me this. He said when he's in an interview, when they ask him, why should I hire you before somebody else? He says, because I got common sense. And that rings a chord with everybody, because everybody doesn't have common sense. It's not so common, right? And then he said, I got common sense and I listen. And I was like, man, I've interviewed a lot of people. I never heard people say that, right? So effective listening abilities. And another way to say I have a common sense is that I exercise sound judgment, right? So take it for what it's worth. This is just the basis of it. So I'm going to stop here and ask for any questions.
had another comment, Ota.
Yes. Keep them coming.
So in working, so in addition to working in IT, I also run a youth program, and we work with resume building and so on with high schoolers. And I work with high schoolers and young adults. And one of the most common areas that I see people lacking is that they take information like you're giving or a person who helps them, and then they don't put much effort in themselves. And so while you're doing this, I just encourage people not to be lazy. And when you're working with somebody, outwork them. So like whoever Otha is helping, uh, they should be doing as much work, research effort into building their own resume as he is. And then that way you can talk to it. Because sometimes we get resumes and we can't speak to it because we didn't invest any effort in it.
Right. And you make a good point. And that's one reason why I don't offer to help a lot of people. I kind of pick and choose people just through conversations, and people that are real aggressive. They may hit me up on LinkedIn, and I'm like, okay, they hit me up on LinkedIn, I call them, and you can sense that passion, that enthusiasm, right? I'm like, okay, I'll go above and beyond, because I know and even with this, once I get it started, they're gonna take it to the finish line. You know, um, and there's a few people like that. They're go getters. Oh, one more thing too. When I was looking at stuff for blasting, I saw that a lot of people had AutoCAD in there. So I put an AutoCAD with a question mark to say, okay, maybe he used to use it and didn't think it was applicable, right? So this is basically it. I flushed out um, the jobs that he currently had. That way his resume has some umps to it. And then I'm going to, with him, flush out this part. Okay? Now, the key is, I know that we'll just go up to this section, right? Knowledge and Active Directory, Mac OS, Windows. So even if I start off by having 3 different groups, right? I can say, software, programming languages, software languages, right? OS, and I'm doing networking, security, networking, background, right? And the reason I like to do these is because it kind of helps me keep on track, right, of what I'm putting down. And he can say, you know what, I don't want those 3 categories. I'm just going to have it as skill set, and then I'm just going to have things listed without the headings. Fine, because that takes up space. Because he may say, you know what, I want my resume to be 1 page. And so having these headings here takes up space. So I don't want to have the headings. I just want to get rid of them, which is fine, right? I even play around with my margins as well, right? That way, for those individuals that want it, or 1 page or maybe 2 pages at the most, okay, we can work on it. Let's tweak the margins from the top, the bottom, the left, and the right. Okay, make sense? So here, I got a question about the AutoCAD. I'm going to ask him. I know he deals with Linux, so I need to know what version of Linux. I know he deals with Kali Linux at least, because he attends the class. I also know that he's been dealing with Ansible, right? What else? Oh, I forgot what else he told me, but we'll flush it out. So these are the things that, okay, I have the questions, I need to flush it out. Dealing with the ticketing systems, what does he know in Active Directory? In the back of my mind, if you have knowledge of Active Directory, I'm gonna go back to my resume. So my resume, I'm not an Active Directory person, but I know I think I have something when you're dealing with group policies or something. I can't find it. I know it's here for somewhere. I do a search and find it, but for now, flushing out this section, and then what I'll tell them, look, there's a website called AD Security. .org. The guy goes over Active Directory and attack, and his name is Sean Metcalf or something like that, and use him to kind of beef up your Active Directory, or to look at and see if you understand some of the things. So I'm put that in green. All right. So even because he may not know any software languages, that's fine. The OS, we know he got Macs, Windows 7, Windows 10. We know we got Linux in there. I don't know what version of Linux. It may be Linux Mint, Ubuntu, Fedora. Who knows? All right. So let me check for any questions in the chat.
You want to put that adsecurity.org in the chat room, or were you just using that as an example?
No, that's a good one. AD security.org.
So I have a
Maybe.
little, I got a little technique I use on resumes to get through the, what is it? The resume like auditing system or something like that.
Right.
ATS system, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So on all the white spaces on the resume, I put a text box in there, right? No line, white font. And I put every skill set you could think of: OSCP, freaking pen tester, CCIE, CISSP, you name it, everything. And so when you save it in PDF, nobody will ever see it. They'll never see it. And so even if they convert your resume to back to Word, and if they're doing that anyway, then you got issues. But that's what I do. And I put it all around the white space. So it goes through every time. Every single time. You won't get, because it'll flag saying that, hey, and usually when it flags, most of the time it'd be like an HR person or something that gets it. So they just send it over. And then you just got to use some, you got to answer some interview questions. But yeah, you just in all the white space, put everything you could think of, everything you could think of. And it'll go right past every single time. Nobody never
Why
see
you
it.
always send me your resume in PDFs? Now I know why.
Yeah, it works great, man. So
yeah, and that's good, as far as seeing stuff. And I know a few people have gotten jobs. I know Nick just got, well, he's been at a job in a minute. I don't know if he's still on. I know Rasul has a job, app, and just if you guys could just share your experiences right quick, as far as resume writing and things of that nature.
I don't know, I'm head on with what Al said. I just threw it in the chat because I didn't want to interrupt, but I always do the same with any descriptions that I'm applying for as well. So I always take the entire description of whatever job you're going after, and I copy the entire thing, convert it to text, and then I dump it into white space, either the header or the footer or text box or both. It seems to get past basically that first round of proofing that companies will do. The only other thing I'll probably comment is you don't be so constricted to formats. So I think it was Coach who kind of said, don't be lazy and follow through. But what I'm going to say is almost along the same lines, but make sure you tailor the resume for the job. You don't want to just send out like 15 identical resumes to 15 different places unless they're all the same job. Like, for example, a pen test job is a pen test job. But if you're applying for like a threat intelligence and you don't have, or you don't think you potentially have the skills or you don't have the background, frame the resume to show a story that you do have the background, that even though you're not doing it now, hey, if you put me in that role, hit the ground running, good to go. So just be aware of the little nuances too. I know it's so easy to just copy and paste and just dump the resume in there because it's there, it's available. But I would highly encourage everyone who's seeking a job, and even in the future, make a tailored resume. You'll be very surprised. And I can tell you too, the more callbacks you get, you'll be surprised on as well. So when I went through my move and my shift, every place that and again, I'm not saying it's me, I think it's just the industry itself for pen testing or red teaming, but I got at least a callback or an email, and I got a first interview for all 4 places outside of where I work now. And again, I didn't change the resume up so much, but I definitely was cognizant about specifics that they called out in the resume, or not the resume, in the descriptions. Like, there were places that were looking for, hey, I want to build out a red team or a program for red teaming. So I kind of changed the resume up to show that, hey, I could do that very easily. It's not very hard, or not that it's hard or not hard, but give them the impression I know what I'm doing. And the same thing with pen testing. Like, I think I applied for a PCI compliance pen tester. So this was someone who was going to be attached to a physical PCI team to help coach the companies that they worked for, to give them the right, content so they could pass their PCI or go through their PCI audit. So long story short, is just tailor that resume as best as you can. And if you're not sure what to tailor to, throw it to Otha. I'm happy to review resumes. If anybody needs my email address, you guys are welcome. I went through the same thing, like that first, or not the first resume, but the second resume Otha showed, that was me, because I hadn't done a resume in, my God, like 9 years or 8 years, something like that. It was a really, really long time. Like, even the one that I worked at my last job was still in that type of a condition. And it's not that it's bad. It doesn't really tell a story. It just tells stuff. And I can tell you that you have probably like 30 seconds to a minute to really get whoever looks at this thing to say, yes, he's qualified, or she's qualified, or they're qualified, to do a specific job. So they don't spend a ton of time, because they know that the resumes, for lack of better terms, it could be completely fabricated. But as long as you check, enough boxes and get on the right of, hey, this person is worth interviewing, that's all that matters. And then you can shine in the interview to kind of prove you know what you're doing. That's kind of all I got.
So, to go to caveat on what you said, that is the reason why I asked my initial question, because of the fact that when whoever, I guess, is looking at the resume, they only got like literally however many seconds that you just mentioned. So that's one of the reasons why I asked the question, in regards to, you have 5 pages. And I asked this question because initially that my resume used to be that long, right? And I kept on, and I would, I'm constantly being told that it's too long, it's too long. And even now my resume is 3 pages long, and I was still told that it was too long. But my thing is, I have done a lot of things, right? And I have over 20 years of work experience. So I'm like, I didn't put, trust me, I haven't even put 20 years of my work experience. I've strictly mainly focused on the experience that caters to IT, because I've had more than one career. So but I'm constantly being told that it's too much, it's too much, and I got to cut it down. And and I don't know, it's like there's sometimes when when I apply to jobs, sometimes I do hear back, and sometimes I don't. I mean, I had this one job where, based on the resume, based on the way my resume was right now, I was able to get an interview. I actually went through 5 interviews for one job, only for them not to give me the job. So, don't know what it is that I'm missing exactly. I don't know what I don't know what it is exactly on my resume that is
What type
not.
of position was it that you had 5 interviews for?
Say that again.
What type of position was it that you did 5 interviews for?
It was actually a position literally for the job that I'm doing right now, kind of, sort of.
Okay.
Except for it's a little bit more broader, where it incorporates a little bit of it would, I guess, from what they're telling me, that it would incorporate cloud security, because they're not doing it yet. They're not incorporating cloud security in the role, but that's something that they said they plan to do in the future. They had a cloud security position, which is what I really wanted, but they said that they wanted somebody that has dealt with the cloud, which, because I have not dealt with the cloud, because I was trying to use my resume to tell them that even though I haven't dealt with the cloud, based on my experience, this is how I can apply the experience that I have onto this job. And they were like, no, we need somebody that has dealt with the cloud and worked with the cloud. And I'll say, okay, fine, I will apply for this position. And
Let me ask you this: Have you ever heard of Linux Academy or A Cloud Guru? I think it's called now.
A Cloud Group, yeah. I was with Linux Academy before they converted over to A Cloud. So
Right.
yes, I'm
So
familiar.
here's what I'm saying really quick. Next time you go on an interview like that and they say they want somebody with experience, you tell them you got experience. I mean, Oprah talks about this quite a bit. Do it in a lab setting and then tell them you done worked with it and leave it at that.
Yeah,
and you have to think about this. To be honest, if someone says, "Okay, we want to hire somebody that does with cloud security," and I don't care if your resume has, "Okay, I can deal with it," you don't have cloud security on it,
right.
So what you need to do is get you a free tier account on AWS,
Yeah.
Well,
Azure.
the job was not a cloud security job.
I understand that, but you said they're moving towards that, right? Right? Yes or no? Or maybe I heard you wrong.
I guess.
Okay, so let's talk about a hypothetical situation. It's a very good question. So they are looking for they're moving toward cloud security, right? That's what they want to go to. They're putting it out there on their resume. That means nobody at the company has the experience for cloud security, right? So if you understand the basis of cloud security, you get you an AWS account, you get you an Azure account because you don't know what cloud they're using, or hell, or Google, but usually AWS is kind of the main one. If they have a security an EA with Microsoft, they're going to use Azure. So watch my train of thought. You get you an account, you start playing around with it. You understand what a VPC is. You understand the routing and everything of the security cloud. And you put that on your resume. And on your resume, you word it and you said, because your current job, you're still doing the same thing kind of now. You say, okay, I'm doing a test pilot of AWS Cloud for my job. I have a lab environment where I'm testing out AWS S3 buckets, setting it up, doing, IAM policies, but you're actually doing it because you got an account. And then if you apply for that job, guess what? It doesn't matter about everything else because they want to move towards that. They're going to interview you. And when you're in an interview, they're not going to ask you, they'll ask you questions, but hell, they don't even know it themselves. So it's not like they're going to be asking you deep dive technical questions. And just because you play around with it in your lab environment, let's say a month, right? Or let's just say a couple of weeks, you grind it out 4 or 5 hours a day, in a week's time, that's 20, 30, 40 hours. You're going to be good enough to help them get their objective of moving toward the cloud, right? And that's how, you have to kind of see it from a different perspective. So if there's something that they're going to move toward an organization and they put it on their on their job description, that's what I'm honing in on. Particularly if I have a passion and want to learn it anyway. So you just have to kind of rethink it a little bit. Think at it from a different perspective. Make sense?
Yeah, but I have a caveat on that. So I am actually in a AWS course. I am enrolled. I have an AWS account. When I applied for the job, I was studying for AWS because that was something that I'm interested in going into anyway. However, the job the job that I applied for, the one that I went full all out on, because they said that they would be, even though I didn't have the experience, they were looking for somebody with experience for that particular job, but they are willing to train. The job that I actually applied for, that was a job that I was qualified for. I was qualified because that is what I'm doing right now. That job has nothing to do with cloud.
Okay. So anytime somebody say they would train you, I'm always suspect on that. Right.
Right. They said, so
But you
the
do
thing
have,
that
but
they said
what I'm
was,
trying to tell you is that although you're taking an AWS course, you've been playing around with you do have experience,
oh,
right?
right.
Okay. But was it on your resume?
I believe I put it on their AWS training course because I actually attended
Right.
like
So
a boot
right,
camp,
but you
so
just
it
put
was
the
on there.
training.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm just saying you just put the training course on there.
Yeah,
Right?
that's a training course. Yeah.
You have to word it a certain way so when things are flagged, right, and you have a description, a couple of sentences on there talking about your experience with AWS, right, and that makes a difference, right? And so when you do your resume, you have to tweak it for that particular. You just you can put AWS Cloud, and they may have looked at it into an AWS course. Hell, everybody's taken an AWS course before, right? But where do they use that at? Where do they use that information that they learned in the course, right? So even if it was flagged, they're gonna still look at, they'll still do a quick scan and say, okay, well, where do they use it at? And what if that job they were trying to figure out, well, do they understand availability zones, VPCs, those keywords, S3 buckets? Just having, I took an AWS cloud course doesn't cut it. Okay. I think Rasul was saying something as well. He chimed in, or maybe.
One thing you could think about when you get to the point of multiple interviews, that means they did like something. And so we got to give ourselves credit for that. We got to have the
Right.
posture that I am qualified, I can excel, and we got to give that posture. But one of the things that we also have to do when you get to the point where you're past the first interview, past the second interview, sometimes people are just trying to figure out, do they like you? And so the question is, are you friendly? Do you come across as knowing your stuff with confidence? Because sometimes we can start showing our lack of confidence in multiple interviews. So once you're past multiple interviews, you got to really step up your personality and your confidence level in what you are able to talk about. You got to give sometimes we got to give ourselves more credit, is what I'm saying.
The other thing that might help you too, and I think, correct me if I was wrong too. I think you said this is a current employer. Is that correct?
No, it was not a current employer. It was just a company that when I look at the job description, is the job, when I look at the job description and what I do right now, it's kind of the same, except for the reason that attracted me to them is because they had, um, I guess it's a little bit more broad in regards to that job description, and I still felt qualified for it because it's something that I do right now. So it wouldn't be when that particular job description, 95% of what that job was, 90, I guess you could say 90 to 90%, I knew what they were looking for. Is only probably 10% that they would have to teach me. So that's why I felt qualified for it and I applied because it's what I do right now.
Oh, gotcha. No, the reason I was asking is one thing I've gotten in the habit of doing, and again, I have not, been in the grind, so to speak, to find a job hunting. I got incredibly lucky. And that was because someone had my back inside the company where I work now, and they had the ear of HR and they had the ear of the company or the team that I went into. But what I can tell you that I've used in the past, and you'll get mixed answers, and I can tell you that if you end up getting an answer that sounds very canned, they're never going to tell you the real reason. And a lot of times it is exactly what Coach brought up. Whatever teams that you went across, and again, you definitely have to have thick skin. And I've been in the same situation too, where I've not portrayed, and I'm not saying you did this either, but where I've personally not portrayed myself well in an interview just because I got nervous and I fell apart. But something I like to do, you can go back to them and just say, totally understand, I hope that company at least gave you the, hey, we're going a different direction, blah, blah, blah. Don't feel like it has to end there for you. You can go back to the company and be like, totally understand, and be very appreciative. Just say, hey, and the reason why I say be appreciative and not, salty or angry is because that other person that they're looking at, they could still decline the offer, and that puts you right back in the running because of how you handled rejection. So what I'm more getting at is when you get that, use it as an opportunity to, put one leg up again and just be a good human being, which it sounds like you are. And then ask them at the end to say, hey, if you can tell me this, but can you give me a little bit more insight on, where I was potentially lacking, or, I understand you probably can't give specifics, but what would make me more marketable for a position like yours? And you'd be very surprised. Like HR people, I promise you, the good ones will come back with not necessarily a list, but they'll give you a little bit more insight on why they made the decision that they did. I mean, to a point within the law, they can't just say, hey, we just didn't like you, because that's not something they can not hire you for. But it might give you, they might come up to you and say, hey, no, the other person we're looking at had 4 more qualifications, and they've been working in the industry. They designed, 4 out of the box cloud solutions, and they've been in the exact same tooling as, we have, and we're looking for someone that is, going to hit the ground literally and be able to build this for us immediately. That might be it comes back, and then it won't feel as bad on your end, even though I know rejection sucks either which way you slice it, but that might help you in the long run too. And they could even point to you and say, hey, we were looking for X certification or B certification. And then it could also, not that you want to argue, but then it'll give you another time to say, oh, I have that. You guys did see that on there. You can equate to something else on there too. A good friend of mine actually did that, and they go, no, I didn't see that. And then they got him right back in the round for the 3rd interview. So again, doesn't work all the time. You might never get the answer you actually truly want. But I would encourage you to even do that too. That's a good way to tie up that end when you go through interviews.
And let me also add up something as well, because as we were, um, you know, heading out suggestions, I noticed you kept saying the caveat was that I did this, or I had this, or, this is on, I'm doing the same job function. I think sometimes we have to realize that, you know what? I was the perfect candidate for it. These guys are just idiots. They couldn't see it. They couldn't see the forest because of the trees. And it's happened to a lot of us where you're like, I know I'm not crazy. I'm perfect for them. They don't want to hire me. You know what? I eat my losses. As long as I did my due diligence, which it sounds like you did. Take this feedback to suggestion that that we've given you. Chew the meat, don't spit out the bones, or whatever that saying is. And it could be, you know what? Those guys just didn't know what they had. And they'll continue 6 months, 7 months from now, the position may still be open, and you put your resume in there again, and they'll be like, oh yeah, we remember her. She was a good candidate. For whatever reason, we didn't hire her, but you know what? Whatever that reason that we can't even think of or remember now, we need to call her right back in. But also think about this. The ball is in your court. You hear all these sayings that, look, in 2021, it's going to be 3.5 million shortage and yada, yada. Hell, it's true. And you have to think about, okay, I didn't get this one. Let me, assess myself, see what I did wrong, because maybe I did do something wrong. I dot my I's, cross my T's, I get back at it again, and guess what? I'll get another job that I want. Take it for what it's worth. That maybe, you're saying this caveat, so that means you may have had your I's dotted and T's crossed, and they just couldn't see it. right? It's not your fault, it's their fault. And you just take it and you say, okay, I get me another job. Because there are a lot of them out there, So hopefully that helped, in some sort of fashion, you and others as well.
Yeah, exactly what the previous guy said. I did exactly that. I had because after you've been, this is not my first rejection, right? So you get a little bit of tough skin. And
Right.
was I upset initially? Of course I was. Anybody would be, especially
Right.
when you kind of had your heart dead set on it. But I went ahead and I actually had to think a couple of days after I got the rejection email that what they said exactly was the they thanked me for my time and energy for the interview process, but they said the hiring team did not come up with a consensus on making an offer. So I just said, so I asked a friend of mine who's a hiring manager. I asked them, and I think I asked about 2, 3 people, and they were saying that one of the things that he said was, don't bother because I was a good candidate. I went through the interview process. There was nothing, there was nothing that gave me the impression that maybe they didn't like me, you know what I mean? Unless they were good actors, I don't know. Because each and every single one of them that I interviewed said that they believed that I was a good candidate for that particular job. So, because my interview went all the way to the founder of the company. That's how far I
Okay.
got. So, I just said thank you for the opportunity and just keep me in mind for future opportunities. Because initially I wanted to ask the typical question: was there anything that I could have done? But one of my friends had mentioned that he said a lot of the times for legal reasons they try not to answer those type of questions because depending on how the answer may come back, they could get sued. So they typically don't answer those type of questions, and because it could be taken out of context, whatever. So I didn't ask what could I have done better to be a more suitable candidate. Instead, I just said thank you for the opportunity, and just keep me in mind for future opportunities. But yeah, and I just left it at that. And as I said, there was nothing for each and every single person that interviewed me. There was nothing that gave me the impression that I wasn't a good candidate. Each and every single one of them said that I would be a great addition to the team. So to later on get an email saying that they couldn't, whatever it was with the offer, and that's okay. So I didn't really
That was your
take
problem. You wanted too
what
much money.
you said what.
When they say offer, look, see that, only thing you could do was to get cheap money, but and you never want to go lower than whatever you're asking. And when you said, oh,
Right,
because the offer, that means, oh, you're a great candidate. They just don't want
right,
to pay. So
right, right, right,
you didn't
right,
want that job, so you can
right.
stop scratching your head.
Right,
you know,
right. And that's what I kind of chalked it up to.
yeah.
I think they didn't want to pay me. They wanted my experience, but they didn't want to pay me, which has been my typical experience for a while now. So I'm not surprised. It's not,
When they
but
come
it's
back,
just this is the first time I've actually did 5 interviews. That was like a
right?
lot. That's a bit much for me. You
Yeah.
know.
And check this out. I told you they were assholes. If they circle back to you and say the job is still open, that means they want to pay you. Ask for $10,000 more, just because of the bullshit they put you through, or ask for 10,000 signing bonus, and you'll get it probably. So
I went and I looked. I mean, I don't know if it's update or not, but I think I went the other day and I looked, and I looked on LinkedIn and it looked like that job is still open. And then the other day, so right before I started this interview process, right, the founder sent me a LinkedIn request, right, and I accepted it and everything. Last week, he was looking at my profile,
right,
and
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, keep on looking.
You know, and now they want, what is this person? You know, because she was such a good candidate. Now they're curious about you. You know, so those things happen. You know, and it's good that you brought it up because you saw how people were drilling down. You had your bases covered, but more importantly, there's gonna be times where you will get rejected. Resume perfect, interview perfect. It just wasn't meant for you. Now it hurts because it's still rejection, and you may have been looking forward to that job, but something better is coming.